Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. Today, we are nominally talking about Google's big win in their antitrust case. TLDR on that is that they are not going to be forced to sell Chrome. So we will talk about the implications of that, what it means for their positioning vis-a-vis AI, why Chrome might matter in the AI race. But I thought it would be interesting to use this as a chance to do a little bit of a retrospective around where Google has been. I think when it comes to the major labs, no one has gone through such wild swings of where they sit in the AI race as has Google. There is a growing chorus of people who believe that Google is now firmly in the lead when it comes to AI. That's showing up not just in random tweets, but on prediction markets. Since all the way back in May, Google has been slightly in the lead when it comes to the polymarket prediction market for which company will have the best AI model by the end of 2025. But since the release of GPT-5, the number has absolutely skyrocketed up to Google having a 75% chance. Now, on the one hand, this shouldn't be all that surprising. Google has had a longer relationship with generative AI building than most of their competitors. They had the talent, the money, the motivation, and the drive, which is why it was so shocking how far behind they found themselves when ChatGPT was launched. The piece that we're looking at is from Forbes in February of 2023. It was called AI First to Last: How Google Fell Behind in the AI Boom, and was one of a series of pieces with similar themes around that time. The piece discussed Google's early lead in AI. They talked about how just a few months after becoming CEO back in 2016, Sundar Pichai declared that Google would become an AI-first company. Now, interestingly, even back then, they already felt like they had their back to the wall at least a little bit. Amazon's release of Alexa had taken Google by surprise, feeling like they should have been first to market with that product. Forbes wrote, 7 years later, Google finds itself in a similar position, again beaten to market in a field it should have dominated. But this time it's worse. The usurper is OpenAI, a comparatively small San Francisco startup and not a deep-pocketed giant like Amazon. The product is ChatGPT, a bot that can generate sitcom plots, resignation letters, lines of code, and other text on almost any subject conceivable as if written by a human, and it was built using a technology breakthrough Google itself had pioneered years ago. Now, of course, part of what made this all the more frustrating was that Microsoft, by dint of their relationship with OpenAI, had moved into more of a software leadership role than they'd had in some time. And for much of 2023, Google's story in AI was all about catching up. There were a bunch of product announcements with names that you might or might not remember, for example, Bard, but nothing that could be considered even close to GPT-4 level, in other words, close to the state of the art, until the very end of the year when Google announced Gemini. Now, I was already 6 months into the show at that time, and I remember that the general sentiment was that it was very much a pressured and rushed announcement, forced by how far ahead OpenAI was. Although it was announced in December, it was announced with a bunch of pre-recorded demos, and the most performant model wasn't even available yet. That wouldn't come until the beginning of the next year. And when it did little to improve Google's rough position. First of all, Google got itself completely caught up in the culture war by releasing an image generation model that tried extremely hard to add diversity into historical images in places that were completely inappropriate. For example, putting people of color into Nazi uniforms as emblematic examples of early 1940s German soldiers. Hold aside the political dimensions of this, it was bad enough that Google pulled the model entirely and later apologized for releasing something that was so far out of sync with reality. A couple months later, we had the first incarnation of Google's AI overviews. While they've now become totally de rigueur and very much a part of the search experience, at the beginning, all that anyone could talk about were things like where Google suggested that people use glue as an ingredient in pizza. Now, whereas the problems with the image generator were extremely widespread, Google did try to say that the examples going public with the AI overviews were more isolated, but still it all contributed to this narrative of Google being incredibly far behind. Behind the scenes, though, there was a lot going on at the company. Some of that was personnel. One of the issues with Google had been that AI was so big at the company that it was spread across a lot of different divisions rather than consolidated and focused. Over the course of 2024, there was a set of, at sometimes painful consolidation to bring everything basically under DeepMind and DeepMind leader Demis Hassabis. For example, it took until October of 2024 for Google to fold the team that was responsible for the Gemini app into DeepMind officially. But where things really started to turn around for Google was, of course, the release of NotebookLM, or more specifically, the release of audio overviews in NotebookLM. NotebookLM was first announced earlier in the year as part of a string of announcements and was frankly kind of buried when it came. However, in the fall, they released a new feature called Audio Overviews, which was basically a way to auto-generate a podcast based on any subject matter. You could drop a set of documents or source links into NotebookLM, and in a couple of minutes, you would get an audio conversation between two hosts explaining the material in ways that were engaging and really fell into all the tropes of podcasting. Now, this is the type of thing that could easily just become a novelty, something that people tried once or twice and then went away from. That didn't happen. And I think part of why it didn't is that Google really had unlocked a different medium for consuming information that some number of people found really useful. For example, for me on the podcast, it was sometimes a more engaging way to deal with complex technical topics that I wanted to then share with this audience. I knew law firms who were using it to help summarize case files. You had students who were using it as a study tool. And the point was that for the first time, Google AI had a genuine bona fide hit on their hands that people were really thrilled about. I think it was also a testament to the goodwill and good brand that Google has built over the last decades, that there was almost a sense of relief of Google getting back in the AI game and doing something well, as though the aberration had always been when they were behind. As the year closed out, it was clear that heading into 2025, AI competition was going to be the big mission. In a December town hall, CEO Sundar Pichai told the company, "I think 2025 will be critical. I think it's really important we internalize the urgency of this moment and need to move faster as a company. The stakes are high. These are disruptive moments. In 2025, we need to be relentlessly focused on unlocking the benefits of this technology and solve real user problems." And indeed, 2025 has been an absolute flurry of products. One interesting inflection point came at the I/O conference in May. Google made an odd decision heading into the conference, releasing AI mode for search the prior week. When he took the stage for his keynote, Pichai said, "Normally you wouldn't have heard much from us in the weeks leading up to I/O because we'd be saving our best models for the stage. But in our Gemini era, we're just as likely to ship our most intelligent model on a Tuesday in March or announce a really cool breakthrough a week before. We want to get our best models into your hands and our products ASAP, so we're shipping faster than ever." And ship they did. Google coverage listed 100 different things announced at I/O, and a very meaningful portion of them were AI related. And there was definitely a sense that Google was starting to get its groove back. Now, there are two big areas where Google has been very on the ball this year. One of them is multimodal, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and where I think more than anything else, the sense of Google maybe now being in the leader or pole position with AI comes from. But it's also important to note that they recognized quite early in the year that agentic coding was going to be a massive, massive theme. Back in February, they released a version of Gemini 2.0 that was fine-tuned for coding. Again, CEO Sundar Pichai tweeted, "New Gemini 2.0 updates for developers. Starting today, you can use Gemini Code Assist for free in your favorite IDE. It's Gemini 2.0 fine-tuned for coding, including 180K code completions per month, 90x what others currently offer. Plus, Gemini 2.0 Flashlight is now GA and cost-effective for projects that use long context windows." And so what I think is notable here is that one, they understood that models that were specific to coding were going to be important, and two, they knew that they wanted to compete on cost because the increase in performance of these models was going to ultimately lead to a big increase in the tokens that would ultimately be consumed. A couple months later in May, they released an updated Gemini 2.5 Pro, once again focused on coding. Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis tweeted, "Very excited to share the best coding model we've ever built. Today we're launching Gemini 2.5 Pro Preview I/O Edition with massively improved coding capabilities. It's especially good at building interactive web apps." A couple months later in June, N. Taylor Mullen tweeted, "This is truly a proud moment for me. For the past few months, we've pushed nonstop to build Gemini CLI. It's been a journey, and I couldn't be happier to finally share it with all of you." Okay, so the point here is clearly that Google was focused on this coding use case. And if you need evidence of whether it worked, look no further than an announcement from July, where Google shared that they had jumped from processing 480 trillion tokens in May to 980 trillion by July, 104% growth in just a couple of months. I think a huge part of that was the emergence of this coding use case. Still, it's impossible to talk about Google AI right now without recognizing that where they have really started to break out into a distinct lead is around multimodal, specifically when it comes to video, image generation, and world models. For a while, all the buzz in video was around OpenAI's Sora. Over time, however, Sora stayed very much in a behind-the-scenes for paid partners only kind of mode, and when Google released Veo 3, it had one very specific transformative difference that made, as it turns out, all the difference in the world. That was the ability to generate sound and video at the same time. For the first time with AI video generation, People didn't have to create the video clips and the audio clips separately and lay them together with some program. Instead, they could generate in a single shot the full clip, including video and audio. AI-generated video absolutely exploded from there. I did a show back in July about 10 AI video trends taking over the internet, and if you've spent any time on TikTok or Instagram Reels or any social media in the last 3 months, you have absolutely been inundated with VO3-generated videos. Of course, it's not just video. More recently, we've got Genie 3, which is Google's experimental world model where you can generate entire interactive environments with just a prompt. This is still a little bit more firmly in the realm of the future and the experimental, rather than something you're seeing people deploy for a lot of different use cases right now. But it still contributed to this sense that when it comes to multimedia and multimodality, Google is just on a different plane. And then, of course, more recently, you'll know if you've been listening to the show, that everyone's been talking about Nano Banana, or as it's technically called, Gemini 2.5 Flash Image, or something along those lines. Now, what made Nano Banana different is its ability to do editing of a particular image in a way that is extremely high fidelity to the prompt. It captured more attention than any image generation model we've seen since the Studio Ghibli trend of earlier in the year from OpenAI. And while the Ghibli trend was a cultural moment, the image editing capabilities of Nano Banana are actually opening up a new variety of use cases that people are finding really economically useful. When Andreessen Horowitz came out with its latest edition of its top 100 Gen AI consumer apps, the first trend that they noticed was Google making big moves. Google had 4 different entries to the list. Gemini was number 2 behind only ChatGPT, but Google AI Studio, NotebookLM, and Google Labs all showed up in the top 50 as well. AI Studio was number 10 and NotebookLM was 13. So 3 Google properties in the top 15 Gen AI apps for consumers. All of which brings us to the latest news, that one of Google's biggest overhangs has been resolved. A judge has ruled that Google will not be forced to divest of Chrome in order to cure their monopoly on search. What's more, they will still be allowed to pay to be the default search engine on other platforms, which is of course the relationship that they've had with Apple. The only prohibition is that they can't arrange exclusive deals for distribution. The judge also ruled that Google has to share their search data freely with competitors to make their moat less complete. Now, this had been a big topic of conversation recently. We are in the beginning innings of the AI browser wars. Perplexity has been making moves with their Comet browser. OpenAI is reportedly going to release an AI browser. And both of those companies had expressed interest in buying Chrome if Google was forced to divest. Perplexity had even announced an official $34.5 billion offer, despite the fact that that was more than the company is currently valued at. And Sam Altman said that if Google was forced to divest, it was something that they would have to look into and that they would, of course, be interested. Now, alongside the decision that Google would not have to sell off Chrome, there were a few other interesting notes on the AI competition that came out of the decision. First, the court explicitly recognized that Apple would be a big loser if Google were no longer able to pay to be the default search engine. Not exactly a comment on AI, but certainly a demonstration of how utterly directionless they are, given that they're reliant on a $20 billion a year deal with a competitor as a major source of revenue. The bigger point that the judge recognized was that AI is rapidly changing the landscape of search, so intervention isn't obviously necessary. The judge stated that AI startups, quote, are already in a better position both financially and technologically to compete with Google than any traditional search company has been in decades, except perhaps Microsoft. The judge added, there are strong reasons not to jolt the system and to allow market forces to do the work. Google, for their part, said that the decision, quote, recognizes how much the industry has changed through the advent of AI and validates their position that, quote, competition is intense and people can easily choose the services they want. Now, Google is still reviewing the decision and could appeal the slim penalties they received, namely the forced data sharing, under the guise of protecting user privacy. For their part, the markets rejoiced upon hearing the news, sending Google stock soaring by almost 9%. Analysts were quick to note that the ruling allows Google to sign similar distribution deals on AI as they established in the search era. And with Apple seemingly vacating the field, it seems entirely likely that Google will pay up big to use the iPhone as a major distribution channel for Gemini. DOJ antitrust head Abigail Slater seemed satisfied with the results, posting, the court recognized the key inflection point we are in with the development of AI. The court gave a leg up to the United States in the global AI race, preventing Google from slowing down AI innovation with the same anti-competitive playbook it used to freeze search competition. Still, you gotta think this seems like a huge advantage for Google as they seek to get out into the lead position when it comes to AI. This was nothing like the antitrust action suffered by Microsoft in the 90s. Google will still be allowed to pursue acquisitions, sign distribution deals, and generally use their size as an advantage. And all in all, it seems like there is a lot more coming. A couple hours before I recorded this, I noticed a new piece on the information about Google ramping up their AI chip competition with NVIDIA. We'll probably get into this more later this week, But information sources suggest that Google has recently been approaching small cloud providers that primarily rent out NVIDIA chips about also hosting Google's AI chips in their data centers, and at least one agreement has been reached. There is also a slew of rumors about Gemini 3 being right on the horizon. Kath Korovec, the director of product at Google Labs, seemed to be dropping some sort of hint on Tuesday, posting "It's a big week" with a squid emoji, although it turned out that was about their Jules coding agent. Then, of course, there was this widely seen tweet from Semi-Analysis who wrote, "Because Google is so bad at tweeting, we'll do it for them. Gemini 3 is shaping up to be an incredibly performant model, especially on coding and multimodal capabilities." So, as we wrap up, is Google officially in the AI lead right now? I think that there are somewhere between 2 and 4 potential counterpositions. The first is that while yes, Google has 4 properties in the top 50 of consumer AI apps, Gemini at number 2 behind ChatGPT has only 12% of ChatGPT's visits on the web. The gap is narrower on mobile, but still very significant. The reality is that for an entire generation, ChatGPT simply is AI. And for as much as Google might be beating OpenAI in those other models, a huge percentage of current usership is focused on those core LLM chatbots. I think a second and maybe third potential argument is less about where things are today and where about things will be, which is that it's pretty dangerous to ever fully count either Elon or Mark Zuckerberg out. XAI has put on extreme moves when it comes to catching up in this race and is on an incredibly impressive trajectory. When it comes to Zuckerberg and Meta, we haven't seen the outputs of the talent wars yet, but certainly they've been aggressive enough about acquiring talent and appear to be aggressive enough about acquiring compute that it's not inconceivable that things could look very different about a year from now. Speaking of trajectory, Anthropic has put out by far the fastest growing products in this space this year, really cementing their lead in that key category of coding, even if Google has also been doing well in that area. And then there's the whole mess of Chinese companies, which has continued to put out very impressive models very often in an open source way. And so that's the reason for the question mark in this title. I'm certainly not ready to declare yet that there is one company that is distinctly in the lead. There are lots of different advantages that different companies have and different ways to squint at it. But for Google, the fact that they have come from confusing laughingstock 18 months ago to growing consensus at their place atop the heap has got to feel good. I also think that regardless of anything else, even if they just won multimodal, there are so many stones to turn over when it comes to the amazing things that we're going to get to create with future image models, video models, and world models, that the future of Google AI is looking very bright. That's how we're going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief. Thanks as always for listening or watching, and until next time, peace